Okay, so we are live on Facebook. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Portuguese American Art Gallery Meet the Artist session on behalf of the Embassy of Portugal in Washington, D.C., PALCUS, the Chamber of Commerce, and FLAD. My name is Sandra Pires, and I am the Cultural Attaché at the Embassy of Portugal in Washington, D.C. I have here the artist Michael de Brito, who is co-hosting this session with me. We are here today to meet the artist Lino Azevedo. This session is going to be streamed on Facebook as well as on Zoom. Please ask your questions on the chat box below or ask the questions on Facebook. Michael, do you want to introduce yourself and Lino?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael de Brito. I'm an artist working out of Jersey City, New Jersey. And I was asked to co-host and to introduce the featured artist today, which is Lino Azevedo, who obtained a bachelor's degree from San Jose State University and his master's degree from Winthrop University in South Carolina. He has taught art at the university level for the past 9 years and is currently a foundations professor at Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia. He's an award-winning artist whose work has been exhibited internationally and published in multiple journals and magazines. So welcome, Lino.
Olá, tudo bem?
Tudo bem. I just wanted to mention to our audience that there will be an opportunity for Q&A with Lino. In the meantime, you can use the chat box or pose your questions through Facebook. Lino, the floor is yours.
Okay. So, hello. Olá. Yes, so aside from those things, I think a lot of my education did come from my mother, who was an oil painter. So that was in the mid to late 70s, where she was doing a lot of oil painting, which are still up in my parents' house. And I think a lot of it comes from what I'm going to cover in the slides. If you guys want to go through those, I can fly through those. And also a lot of influences from the Portuguese community as far as, I would say more towards the Catholic community, which came into fruition a little bit later when I was maybe in my 30s, where I started basing a lot of my artwork on the more Gothic type of stained glass and early Renaissance type of look that was on, say, Stations of the Cross and stuff like that. So do you guys want me to do the slides?
Yes.
All right. So, messy. Okay, oops, let me go all the way up to this. Okay. Actually, yes. First, I want to talk about where my parents are from. So, can anybody in the chat box tell us where this is? Now, if I have family and friends here, you're cheating. So this island has been on the news a lot lately, and it's the one my parents are from. So this side of the island is not getting the earthquakes as much, but right through here, the more populated areas are. So Sao Jorge is in the middle of all 9 islands of the Azores. And here they are. And there's Sao Jorge in the middle. And then here they are in the Atlantic Ocean, in the middle of nowhere, all by themselves.
Right.
So my parents moved from the Azores to Portugal, and they got married, and then they came all the way to the United States, to the West Coast. I grew up in the Bay Area. All right, so to learn English, because of course, being raised by immigrants, my parents taught us English by putting us in front of the TV, and we had Sesame Street. So technically, this is maybe one of my first influences. It was cartoons and Muppets. I didn't really understand how a Muppet moved around because, of course, we don't see what's under them. But cartoons, somebody at school, one of the other kids told me they were drawn, and then the drawings were close together, and that's how they made them move. Stop motion animation was a big influence early on. And maybe a little bit older, my brother and I were watching the old Ray Harryhausen movies, Sinbad and the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, Jason and the Argonauts, and so on.
Such good
I'm sorry?
Such good movies, yeah, such good films, especially for art,
Yeah, and then again, it was like somebody, and then you see that somebody has a puppet this big that they're moving around. It's like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. It could be done, by humans, This was National Geographic magazine. So my dad mostly would say in the valley in in California from Portugal, you would probably work as a dairy farmer. And then if you were in an urban area, you would work probably as a sanitation worker or as a janitor. And my dad got a hold of a whole collection of National Geographic magazines, which were a huge influence because the illustrations in them were so professional level. So this maybe as I was getting a little bit older and not as much with the cartoons and more towards these still images that told a story. So telling a story with just one image was, this is probably around the time it really began.
I do remember these pieces too from these magazines, and you're right, they're beautifully done, and I understand why you were inspired by them.
Yeah, John Gersh did these, and he would sculpt these first, and
Really?
then he would do photos, and then he would paint it. And he was also a paleontologist, so he had the completeness. So of course, when you're 6 or 7, 8, 10 years old, you're thinking, oh, well, I'm going to go to school to be a paleontologist and an illustrator, not knowing that that in itself takes like 100 years. Right. This is Kazuhiko Sano. Okay, so Catholic school and the Portuguese marching band. So the Portuguese marching band on Sundays during spring, summer would go from the Portuguese Hall. This is in the Bay Area, Santa Clara, Mountain View, San Jose, Sunnyvale, I think, had one. I know Mountain View had a big community. But basically, the band would start at the hall. We would march on the street to get permission from the city, then go to church mass, a Portuguese mass, and then that was an hour, and then we would march and play on the way back to the hall. And then I also went to Catholic school. So a lot of the images that were on the walls, the Stations of the Cross, the 12 Stations of the Cross going around the church, the statues, that was a big influence for me. Not so much right away, but it kind of stayed with me. It really, really dug in. And so later I would come across this type of thing at the Met in New York. I lived in New York for 5 years, in my late 20s to early 30s. And then so this kind of like influenced me back. So I'll show you a little bit of that later. But meanwhile, there was a friend who moved next door. At that time, I was probably listening to Diana Ross and still watching the more innocent cartoons. And then he got me into comics. He got me into Dungeons and Dragons. And then, my brother and I. So he doesn't get a pass on this. So if he's here, then he understands all that. And then heavy metal music. So the heavy metal music wasn't just the music itself, it was the imagery. So this type of thing seemed very adult. It had angst. It had a lot of emotion. So if you were angry, this worked. It was okay. It was okay to be angry. It was okay to have opinions about something. Adam Jones of Tool was an influence on me, probably early college. Around that time. Not just music from the band, but also the fact that he handled a lot of the images on the album covers and in the music videos themselves. He was trained as, I think, a stop motion animator and special effects guy. All right, let's go to college. So I did, and I was always looking for the more academic side. So really the generation that taught my generation in the 90s were themselves taught by the abstract expressionists. So when you wanted to learn how to do something in a traditional sense, meaning, can you teach me how to draw and paint something that looks real? It was hard to find, but I did, and I did a lot of research on my own. This is before the internet, so you'd have to go to this building that had a bunch of it had like these things, and they had a paper in between, like the harder stuff. What are those called? The library. We'd go to the library, do research, bring a big pile of books home, and some of it was a lot of step-by-step type of thing.
How was the response from your professors when you were trying to? Because this is already this is high school, right? So, or this is undergrad.
This is early grade. This is undergrad.
What was the response from them when they, saw that you were pursuing more of a figurative kind of background? I just find it interesting because I was kind of going in the same road.
Okay, so not bad, but what happened was that the illustration department and the fine art department would there was a group of us. We were all influenced by the same artists, kind of led by a friend of mine named Jeff Farber, who kind of was like the glue that held things together. He wanted to be an illustrator, but he also wanted to be a fine artist. And so a lot of us were kind of going down that path, but that didn't go well. You were supposed to pick one or the other. So that part didn't go well. The fact that there are many fine artists like Andrew Wyeth and many who worked at the highest level of fine art, but also had a more representational, or I guess we could say realistic way approach of like a technical academic way, was okay. That was never an issue. It was subject matter and direction. That was always an issue with the professors. So I don't see that at all, at SCAD or a lot of colleges I've been at or teaching, because there are so many majors now. I mean, you can literally major in not only animation, but just the character design for animation, 3D or 2D animation and so on. Right. So at that time, though, that was the main friction, was there was kind of a push and pull. Why would you go into illustration when you could, have your own voice? And then illustration just had more opportunities at that time. So they were always kind of like, well, you should come this way because you have the technical background and, so on and so on. That was the main push and pull. So academic drawings, from the figure, and then I got into character design. There were things like Magic the Gathering out a lot, and a lot of character design, not only for books and games, but actually video games for sure at this time, more illustrations.
Did you find that you started kind of honing your style towards the end, or more towards the middle of college?
I would say after college, actually. I feel like a lot of this is more academic and trying things out at this point. I'm still kind of like, especially of course with this and this. Right. And then here, yes, I guess I'm starting to, this might be late college actually, yeah. So, and this was after, or just right after, towards the end.
Those seem very much more polished, right? And someone who is kind of more well-rounded, like understanding what they want.
Yeah, and then there were quite a few. So in the illustration department, you did have exercises that really drilled you step by step, due dates that were like kind of vicious, really. And you did do stuff that had a lot of requirements and a lot of restrictions, or I should say parameters, not restrictions.
Yeah, sounds good.
This is all this one, and
yeah.
I don't think I got it in here. And then natural blindness I can show in a little bit. I have it on a magazine cover. Is part of my senior thesis. Okay,
and it's interesting to see your influence from like the Iron Maiden and like Megadeth, because like I do remember those, and this has that kind of vibe to it. So it's cool.
Yes, Gerald Riggs, I think, was the guy who did all the Iron Maiden covers. So Baron's story was, I didn't take him as an undergrad, but the other students shook their head wondering why I didn't. And so I actually went in and back and sat in on his class after graduation because I didn't realize what a huge influence he was on some of my favorite artists. Right. So he's famous for doing quite a few things, including this book cover for Lord of the Flies. Yeah. And then he's probably more famous for doing his journals at this point and being a lot more of a expressive artist, not as much commercial. And then Kent Williams, this is Dave McKean, Kent Williams, and Bill Sienkiewicz, three of my favorite artists who I later found out that they either took classes from him or were very heavily influenced by Baron's story. Right there. Okay, so this was my I guess the equivalent of a senior thesis piece. And I had to do I did a small painting first, scanned it in, then printed it out. So even then, this is 1997, you could print out onto thin canvas, thin watercolor paper, and so on. And I found a place that did that. Later, I got my own printer and was able to do not this big. This is like 30 by 40. And then I stretched it after the small painting was up and went back to the photo references, messed around, and then in Photoshop, and then painted on top of this with oil paint, which I don't use much of, but I really like the control of it. And this one took me forever. So another reason why I probably won't go back to oil paint as far as a full process. But these are all friends of mine that had to pose, and I posed them reluctantly on their part on top of ladders. So putting a blindfold on and standing on a ladder, I didn't realize how much I was asking of them. So I still owe them to this day something. And then they had to kind of dip their feet down a little bit. So they were really balancing on their heels on a step ladder in a backyard where the sun was going through the trees onto their clothing. And then I matched it with a photo I found out of a magazine. This was before the internet, or right around when the internet was kicking in, that I took out as a car commercial, and I took out the car and put them in it and put in some ground and stuff like that.
Yeah, the lighting in this piece is beautiful, and I'm really, I think having them pose in the woods so they can get the accurate lighting is just, yeah, it makes it work perfectly.
Yeah, it was actually in a backyard with a couple of trees blocking the sun. So we were actually playing board games, and then I kept looking outside and said, okay, guys, in about, I'd say like half an hour, maybe an hour, and they didn't really realize what I was going to put them through. But Mark here on the right, yeah, he wasn't handling this very well. So one of the other guys had to kind of hold his leg because he was kind of shaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe
that figure there it's so needed too, with that little splotch of red on the shirt and the hat. It's just it's so nice, adding that in.
Thank you. Oh, obrigado. Okay, so then after graduation, I had already been to Portugal a few times. I'd been to the Azores and the mainland, and some friends and I, 4 of us, decided to do a backpacking trip across Europe. I planned it so that it would end in Portugal. That way I could get there maybe a little early or a little late and stay with my cousin, because I knew I'd be out of money by the time I got there, which is exactly what happened. So I was on fumes going on a overnight red eye train from Sevilla, Spain into Lisbon. And then he would go to work. He was a music teacher at the time. And then I would go into Sintra and up to the Castel San Jorge. I would go to all of the sites and take pictures. And then I was kind of playing, because I actually sort of wanted to move to either New York or Lisbon. So I kind of said, well, I need to support myself if I move to either one, but Lisbon. So I started painting from photographs that I took. So on the left is the Moorish ruins, which is in Sintra. And then I believe the one on the right is from inside the Torre de Belém, which has cannons, I think. It might have been another tower. But so this was sort of a direction I was kind of playing with. And then I did move to New York instead. Maybe I got scared. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I didn't. 3,000 miles was maybe safer than 7,000 miles or whatever. And then this is where kind of Gothic early Renaissance type of stuff started to influence me again. And I went ahead and kind of embraced that, even though there was kind of a stiffness to it. And it kind of reminded me of like those long hours in Catholic school, those long hours at church and stuff. But I felt like it was a good avenue for me to kind of put in my own social commentary. I think I'd like to quote the character from the movie Seven, played by Kevin Spacey, named John Doe, where I think in society these days, it's not enough to just tap somebody on the shoulder. You have to knock them over the head with a shovel. I don't want to go that far, but I do want to do a little bit more than just tapping somebody on the shoulder. So here's a few other pieces from sort of going over to the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, looking at that early Renaissance and Gothic work, and then kind of coming back and just spending all day working on these smaller kind of early Renaissance.
What's the medium that you're working on here, Lino? Like what medium? Is it like on a board, or these are on canvas?
Most of these are on a board mounted on a panel, or they're on panel. None of these are on canvas. Okay. And it's usually anywhere from pencil first and then layers of paint on top. A lot of times it's pen and ink, or even Sharpies first. Right. And then layering acrylics and other water-based medium on top. So at this point, I'm not touching oils at all. I was in a very small apartment in New York City, and that would have just been a huge mistake for obvious toxic reasons. Oh, actually, I just lied. So this is actually a piece of canvas, but it's not stretched. So this is a piece of canvas that was adhered to a piece of board. And then I just kind of treated, because I didn't like the give of canvas. So that technically is a piece of canvas adhered here. Maybe this will, you can see the edges a little bit more here. Adhered to a board that was then cradled. So I did this, I prepped the board and everything myself. And then a lot of this was markers, and then layers and layers of acrylic paint, gold paint, and
Yeah, but it's nice too. The edges actually, if when I remember going to the Met, those like early Renaissance and even the Byzantine, like on their edges, it almost looks like it has like this kind of wax on the
Yeah.
edges. I don't know what it's from, but that's kind of got that same feel.
Okay, so a lot of this would take studies first. So I would work on these with micron pens first. And then, so I wanted to do one piece that was a lot bigger, that had a little bit of everything. And so these, I would then photocopy these and save the original pen and inks. I was trying to get business minded too. So if I couldn't sell the big painting, maybe somebody would buy the small studies. And then I would paste the photocopies up on a big piece of panel and then paint on top of that. So that it throws off the perspective, or it makes it incorrect, and almost like scenes, a collection of scenes instead of one big together scene. And then a lot of what I do and have done is commercial. So private commissions is a big part of it. I sell a lot of work on Etsy, illustration and fan art, which is sort of a copyright no-no. So it kind of depends on the company. Like Lucasfilm, they don't mind.
Lino, sorry to interrupt you. We have a question from the audience. Rob S. is asking, what are the names of these pieces?
Wow, there's so many I actually, well, this is Kick-Ass Yoda, and this is a Picard movie poster. I think this was a private commission. So sometimes I don't name them for private commissions, but
Rob is asking, the religious ones a few slides back.
This is, I think, just Heads and Wires. I forgot this one. And then this is a Mary and Stone Jesus. And then this one is, I think, sometimes I give it a very, very simple name on as a JPEG. This was just TV Jesus, but they did have more complex names. So that is a good question. Email, and then I can give you some more information. I'll try, and then this is natural blindness, and I think this is all influence stuff. So this was called natural blindness. And again, these were specifically the Moorish ruins, and then cannons from the Torre Belém in Lisbon, both Lisbon.
So he says, thank you. Do you want to say your email, so maybe that they can email you?
Yes, I maybe can. Do I have access to the chat from here?
Yes.
Or should I wait till the end?
No, you can, whatever you prefer.
Okay, so let me wait until the end, and then I'll put it in the chat box.
Okay.
I'll say it now. It's Azevedo Fine Art. Azevedo Fine Art, one word, @gmail.com. But I can then type it again. All right, and then like more fan art. Most of these are somewhere between 8x10 and 11x14.
Are these acrylic? You were talking about it yesterday too with me. So they're acrylic, and then you're going over. Do you go over with any colored pencil or anything like that, or it's just
a little bit of colored pencil? Mostly some kind of drawing medium, whether it be pencil or markers, and then acrylic on top. These are correction. This is like jelly roller and correction pen to get a big, really thick white. Yeah. Yes, sometimes I do color pencil on top as well.
Are you toning the paper before you work on it, like with a brown or a green or something like that?
So what I usually do is I do the drawing first, and then I do a wash over the whole thing.
Gotcha.
So yes, I'm toning it, but not at first. I prefer to draw on something pure white and then tone it depending on mood, depending on where I want to go from that point forward. Again, mostly, the one on the left is actually mostly markers and correction pen. There's a little bit of paint. And these are tiny. These are like what you see on the screen, just a few inches across and a few inches tall. And then, of course, I have to do OCA. You can't go too long without getting cornered into OCA. So over the couch art. So obviously some of this that I've been showing does not go over anybody's couch, unless you're somebody sort of like me maybe, but these are more commercial commissions that I've done for families for something they actually want to put on the wall that doesn't scare anyone. This is actually here in Savannah. It's Reynolds Square in Savannah, just across from the old Pink House. Portraits.
Are these commissions, or these are just
some commissions, some gifts?
Okay.
Yep. Here, a commission of a mural, which I couldn't take a really good picture of it because this big lampshade, or this, I'm sorry, this what a chandelier was in the way. So this is like an Italian Tuscan landscape when we lived in Charlotte. All right, so my gripes, right? So then mostly I work because I have something to say or something to complain about. So, but I try to complain more with paint and less with my mouth. So mostly atrocities around the world. It could be local, it could be what's going on here. It could be what's going on overseas. So a lot of this is actually in grad school. So I'm like, I think most of what I'm going to show from here is like late 30s on, early 40s, and so on. So fast food industry. This one's called, so if you're looking for a title, this one's called McNuggets. Yum. And then the whole Nike thing and overseas sweatshops in Malaysia and whatnot. These are two close-ups. So a lot of these were done very, very fast, and just as soon as the point is there was very little finish. It was like, is the point there? Is it legible? Let's move on to the other one. So I was trying to speed up when I was in grad school. I was trying to get faster. Mortality, as we get older, some of us, me. Political, current or yesteryear. Again, animal cruelty or war, or I lived in North Dakota for a while. And so there was a huge indigenous people community there, or communities, I should say. Child molestation. And then that brings us to lobotomy, which is one of the more current series I had, probably the most complete, something like 25 pieces, I think. I might be wrong. My wife's in the next room. She'll come in and yell at me, probably more than 25. But it could be anything from, again, back to the, racial mistreatments, or anything like us on social media for, whatever it is that is kind of like not connecting us to what needs to get done, not connecting us to even something just on the other side of a wall. So a lot of this is kind of griping on whether it be technology or how it's used, usually big companies taking advantage and that type of thing. And then these are the most current things I've done. One was for a faculty show. The middle was a piece I posted on Etsy. So Rob, if you're there, thank you. I have more coming. And then the one on the right is a magazine cover for a magazine called Meat for Tea. And that's for number 4, issue 4 of volume 15. So, and then that's it. Or let me know. Questions, please. Maybe.
Do you feel that your style has changed from the last like 10 years? Because I noticed that it seems like you're kind of seems like loosening up a little bit. Do you feel like that's what's happening, or not much?
Yeah, I definitely feel like, say, the natural blindness piece was 85 to 100 hours.
Right.
Yeah. So I was in school full time, so I had 85 to 100 hours. Right. I don't know what that even looks like anymore. So that was part of it, was practicality, and the fact that if I work on something like that, I'm literally only looking at that one thing for weeks and weeks, or maybe even over a month at a time. Right. So I had to speed up for that. Plus, just again, going back to getting the point across, that became a little bit more important than having a super awesome finish to it and moving on to the next, because you're working on it. You can already see that what it's going to look like when it's finished. Good. Does it work? I don't know. I'll look at it tomorrow. I need to move on to something else. And then you look at it with fresh eyes, and then it's like, okay, does it work or not? So it's a combination of a few things. But yeah, if it's loosening up, some of that is practicality, and it's just some of it is just I'm eager to get on to the next.
Right. Yeah, I was just asking because I feel it in a similar way too. I think if you can communicate what you want to say in less marks, I think it does, it actually, to me, it looks nicer, right? In that way. So.
Yeah.
David
So,
Da
so we
Silva.
have, so we have here David da Silva Cornell. Both of my grandfather's parents were from São Jorge, Urzelina and Norte Grande, and had Azevedo ancestors. So I'm thinking you must be some sort of primo Lino, loving your work from the fantastic to the social commentary.
If my dad's on, I don't know if he is, I haven't checked everybody to check, then he would be able to tell us. But I can't. Da Silva, I don't remember being related to a Da Silva. Silva, yes, but not Da Silva. But Urzelina is also in that area of earthquakes. North Pekin, not so much. Well, everybody's going to get affected. But anyway, hopefully your family is okay, and they did the whole moving to another island temporarily. So hopefully everybody's okay. Yeah, but that's great. San Jorge, let's go represent. Vamos.
So I just would like to remind of the possibility to post some questions to Lino on the chat box or on Facebook. We will receive the questions also that were asked on Facebook. So if you want to ask some questions to Lino, because Lino answered to most of the questions that we wanted to ask him already with his PowerPoint, which was good.
It seems like you have some people too that have your work hanging in their living room as well too.
Yes, there are people here saying that they have your pieces in their home. And Lino, the new projects that you have are the last ones that you showed?
Yeah, those are the latest. So those were within the past, I want to say just a couple of months.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because they are similar to it's a mixture of the comics and it's a mixture of all what you have done in the past. I feel I don't know if I'm sure or not about this, but it feels like it's a mixture of what you have done in the past.
Yeah, and I think
in moments of your life.
I think Michael, that question and the question you asked earlier, or the statement. Yeah, so that is something that would be, I remember in grad school, one of the professors said, well, it's still looking a little bit commercial, still looking a little bit cartoony and illustration, but you're in grad school for 3 years, so we'll get that out of you. It's like, well, no, because I think it relates. It's easy for people to relate to it. They connect, and then it gets the message across. So the narrative part of it, and then the more straightforward part of it, sometimes I think connects to people right away. So illustration is made for you to pick up the book, pick up the video game, pick up the thing, and then be interested in it. So why not use that when we're trying to make statements that are a little bit more towards social commentary and whatnot?
True. We also have a question from Leonor Alvim Brazão. She's saying, amazing work. Do you paint abstract paintings too?
To shorten the slides, I took them out. I did do some abstraction in undergrad and then again at the beginning of grad school. So I can send some. But I can open up another PowerPoint that has them. But yes, I've worked abstractly with larger paintings that were done technically in the same way with big markers and just going in and filling in with paint, which were more like very kind of loopy, goopy looking, sort of intestinal looking things. And then I've also worked when I did some environmental stuff. I would go into the woods and I would collect twigs and stuff, put them down on a panel, set that on fire to have that smell. Then after the neighbors complained, I would put out the fire. Then it would cool, and then I would pour wood glue on it to keep it down on the board. Then I would spray paint either a fluorescent green, a fluorescent pink, or silver on it, and then wrap that in plastic wrap so that it was more of a statement on what we're doing to the planet. Happy.
I want to ask you is that, because you were mentioning too I forget the artist name from Tool, but do you sculpt? Because I would think that a lot of this stuff would just really, it would really work well as sculpture.
Now I have used Super Sculpey to do some small things. Not professionally. Those are usually gifts, or they're usually as reference to then, put the lighting on them. So that then I could draw or paint from them. So similar to what I was showing with Kazuhiko Sano and the other National Geographic artist, John Gersh. That's the two reasons why I have done it. But, you go to college, you get exposed to more and more, you start teaching, and then, yeah, so it's there. I had to put down the clarinet, I had to put down the bass guitar, and then I had to choose this more linear thing to do. So, but now that I'm getting older, I don't want to miss out. So I do want to pick up the bass guitar again, and I do want to sculpt, yes.
Lino, we have 2 questions from Rob. So he's asking, Rob S is asking, are you constantly working on pieces or do you wait for inspiration? And then he says also, I really appreciate the detail on subdivisions, how each house is in a different configuration. Very well done. So the second is not a question.
Okay, thank you. So Chuck Close, the famous photorealist who just passed away last year, 2 years ago, he says, and it was, it's kind of hard to ignore him because he barely could use his hands. He had no use of his legs from 1988 on, and he was still working every day. He says, some artists wait for inspiration, the rest of us get to work. I'm not at that level, but I try to sketch something every day. It might not be anything that anybody's going to see, but I try to sketch, even if it's just 10 minutes, half an hour, something every day. Yeah. And then, of course, I give demos in class, so that's kind of qualifies, sort of. But mostly I have time on the weekends to actually do some more finished work. So, but I try to sketch every single day something.
Okay, we also have another question from Leonora Alvim Brazão. She's asking, do you have any book about your work?
I don't have a specific book about my work. That is something that I want to put together.
Nice.
Crowdfunded. I have been in some publications, but they're not a collection of work. There's a book cover for Trust. It's the Natural Blindness, even though I didn't do it for this. And then another piece of mine for, what is this? High Shelf magazine. And then another High Shelf magazine and so on. So High Shelf magazine, Read magazine, and Meat for Tea that I showed earlier are 3 publications.
Have you done any comic work at all or no?
Not really. I've done more of like spots here and there, but nothing sequential. I haven't done anything that's been published sequentially. I want to. So that is something I'm messing around with. I was going to go into the master's program at SCAD, but to get the benefit, I could only take like 1 class per quarter.
Yeah, like this lobotomy series, I mean, definitely could be a whole series of comics, So I mean, cool.
So we have another question from Elaine Santos Design. Do you have any family members who are artists? If so, are you inspired by them? If not, who do you find most inspiring?
I think that because I'm first generation American, that in the Azores, it was just, you got up early, you worked either out on the field, milked a cow, worked at the cheese factory, which you had to walk for 2 hours. So I think that, and then of course my parents came. And so when my mom had that little bit of time at night to do some oil painting, which was, we were just old enough where she can just make sure that we're okay, we're doing our homework, or we were doing some oil painting with her. That was it. Really, in my family, the biggest influence was my mom's oil painting at that time when we were kids. And then she went on to other things, but that always stuck. But overall, I mean, I might be missing something. Most of my cousins, my brother's very left-brained, accounting and so on. So like pretty opposite in that sense. And my dad drew a little bit because he did carpentry. So sometimes he would sketch something out really quick, but really not. I have a couple of cousins, maybe they're I have my cousin Toby, who I mentioned earlier for when I was visiting Lisbon, I stayed with him. And he's a musician and he's been a music teacher and he records music. So that aside from him, not much.
How were they in terms of support, in terms of once they started to see that you were committed to going into art?
Very supportive. So the main thing was education. So it really didn't matter where education was going. You just had to go to school. So that was the main thing. That was the main thing that was pushed. I don't believe that is the solution for everyone. And I am in higher education right now, but I feel like you should either educate yourself and constantly be trying to learn, or you go to a place of education. But more that was the thing. What we picked, meaning my brother and I, as far as a major or a career, was not quite as important as making sure that you had the backing and the training for it.
Good. We have another question from Leonora in Brazil. She's saying, I'm also a musician and a visual artist. How do you incorporate music in your work?
Okay. So in grad school, because you had 3 years to experiment, well, you had 2.5 years to experiment, and then you had to like buckle down. But I did do some animated paintings, meaning I would start a painting, I would animate it, and then if it started to drip, I would let that be recorded at full speed, and then I would mess around with iMovie and do recordings of the painting, and then I would slowly paint it away and then kind of break apart the canvas, and then the video itself would become the only work of art because there was actually no painting left because I would build it and destroy it from scratch. And I built or I put together a soundtrack. So one of my other fellow classmates in grad school was a drummer and he could record music. And I picked up my bass guitar for the first time in like 13 years. And we put a soundtrack over it. And that was kind of like part of my experimentation in grad school. So music is a big influence on me, as I mentioned with the slides, but playing music, it's been a while, and I do want to do it again. I do want to pick up the bass guitar again and do some recording of my own music.
And Rob S. is asking another question. So he's asking, how do you decide when one of your pieces is done?
I remember somebody in undergrad said, one of the professors said, the smartest thing you can do as an artist, especially if you have a very tight rendering style, is you get somebody, a significant other or a friend, to stand behind you and tell you when your piece is done. And then they take the brush out of your hand. So we don't know. So for me, is it relaying the message? Is it communicating? Is it finished enough to my liking? And then I want to stop slightly early so that it has a little bit of a fresh painterly or sketchy quality, just a little bit. And then that's when I know I'm done.
Could you talk a little bit about your like the process from like sketch phase? Do you do like sketches like in a sketchbook and then do a more like detailed sketch and then kind of work it, or do you do like multiple just to kind of weed out some ideas?
Yeah, I do thumbnails and I do notes. So it's like ideation with
Okay.
Images and words. They both work for me. Bullet points work for me, and then start to connect that into small little thumbnail images. And then that is enough for a while. So if I don't come back to it, if I have to work all day, something's going on, when I come back to that, then I expand. So once I guess I'm a little bit of a stickler for composition. So most of my thumbnails are not just about what I'm going to do, but the composition and how it fits inside that picture plane. Right. So, and then that might dictate whether I want to do a square piece, which I enjoy doing square pieces, a vertical piece, or a horizontal piece. So mostly composition and placement. Once I have that, then I can start working a little bit bigger. So if it's already something small, I sometimes do one little thumbnail, I'm ready to go. If it's something big, it could be thumbnails into rough sketches. And then I might transfer that. I might use the grid method like you have behind you there. Or I might do an enlargement on the photocopier of my thumbnail and then do a graphite transfer. Or I might scan it into Photoshop, tweak it in there, print it out, and then do a transfer. But yeah, those are usually, if it's, and as far as color, I usually don't do color studies, or I usually don't plan out the color because I want that to be a surprise. I want that to come to me in that moment, usually. Okay. All right.
Lino, I have a question for you. What do you recommend to amateur artists that are starting and unsure about sharing their work?
Okay, so I want to answer that question in two parts. So the first part is, well, I kind of answered it earlier. So a lot of students have asked me, or a lot of younger artists have asked me, should I or should I not go to art school? Should I or should I not go to school at all? Should I just do online learning, YouTube and whatnot? And it depends on you and your personality. So I don't think any of it is wrong. I don't think any of it is better than anything else. I just think that you should go in the direction that you're going to learn, first off. As far as sharing images, I think it's like driving a car. So say a lot of these folks that are maybe asking if they're new artists, maybe they're in their late teens, or so they know how it felt to be 15, 16 to start driving a car. Mom and dad did not take you to the freeway. Okay, so if you're a little bit reluctant to share your work, go slow. How about you share it, not online, share it with family and friends, okay, a little bit, then start posting little by little. Maybe your Instagram is not about art right now, it's more of a social platform, fine. Then maybe every 5th or 6th you show it and just see what you get, you know, and then just know that there's absolutely no way everybody's going to like your art. It's impossible. If everybody likes your art, that is actually something strange. So just know that if you're getting negative feedback, especially if it's opinionated and then positive, you're doing something right. You're like, okay, I'm doing something because this person likes it, this person does not. So keep going in your direction. The main thing is, do you like it? Do you enjoy it? And do you feel something when you do it, produce it, and share it? So little by little, okay? Eventually get to the freeway if you want, an Instagram page or whatever that shows just artwork. Eventually, you can start a new one. But if it's a matter of like, oh, I don't know, then just go, one piece at a time, share it, be kind of a little bit not so obvious about it, and then start diving in.
That's a good advice. So we have another question from Monica Tininenko Reuter. She's asking, have you done any modeling or collaboration with anyone else?
Collaboration, I've done some people, well, in grad school, that was actually one of the assignments. I remember one of the assignments in grad school was to link up and get together and try different things and open up your mind, because what happens a lot when you're just sitting in some studio for hours on end, you get you become very like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Oh, and you're just in the corner. You don't communicate with anybody, and then you become what I think is kind of a problem, and I'm trying to get better at, is a control freak. So you start trying to control everything about your art because the world is chaotic. So the one thing you have is your art. But so this exercise in grad school was specifically to open up and let other people have a piece and their own say. And then it really helped a lot. But professionally, not as much. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But a lot of times, big projects like murals and stuff like that, you kind of have to share some of the wall space. So, which is always kind of fun.
Can you talk a little bit about the course that you teach at Savannah at SCAD? Because I find that to be interesting.
So the foundations department is 83 of us, and we teach the first year classes that are art related. So drawing 1, drawing 2, 2D design, 3D design, and color theory. And then there's some other branches that can be like the third foundations class that you take, depending on what you're thinking of majoring in. So if you're going towards animation, it might be something like life drawing or whatnot, like drawing the figure. So what these classes are doing is what I kind of wish I had when I was an undergrad, and that's very technical, very academic. So going back to the tradition of making sure that you're exposing a student and having them learn as much of the academic, super technical side of art first, and then they branch off into what they want to do. So if they want to let go of that, that's great. If they want to keep it, but the idea of drawing specifically, so you have to take drawing in 1 specifically and design 1, no matter what. It doesn't matter your major. If it's equestrian and you're going to ride horses, that's nice. You still have to take our classes. Why? So most of what we have is visual arts. So visual arts, when you draw, you learn to see. Not just draw. If you're observing something and you're drawing it, you're literally putting that image and the way to do that image into your brain, and you're kind of almost giving yourself a 1% photo, what is it called? Photographic memory for a little bit. So you're starting to build up a library of imagery, and you're teaching yourself how to see better. So you'll see things like if you're going into film, if you're going into fashion, you'll be able to, your tools for seeing, observing, and recording that and feeding it back, whatever the medium might be later, is developed better through just traditional pencil and paper. Or Procreate, or Sketch Pro.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that yesterday too, about, if you had, tapped in and tried out some of these digital programs. I've been playing around with Procreate, and I find that a lot of artists, especially comic book artists, are just basically not using pencil or pen anymore, and they're just using this for beginning sketches and for finals, and it's just beautifully, used. So I didn't know if that's what we talked about yesterday, if you used it.
Yeah, it's just a really nice pencil. I mean, it's a tool. You have to draw.
Right.
It doesn't do it for you. It doesn't get up off the desk and start drawing for you. You have to do it yourself. So yeah, it's just a really nice advanced tool is all it is. There's nothing. I mean, you still have to draw. Yeah, but yeah, at our school, Procreate is number one for sure, for just on a little iPad. And
yeah.
So we have another question.
Sorry, Sandra. I was just.
Do you want to go? No, go.
Yeah, I was just going to say too, because you had said that you incorporate Photoshop as well, right? When you're doing your work.
Right, especially at the finish, but sometimes early on, just because I want to kind of put in a few sketches and kind of do a collage and pull them and push them in different ways inside the composition. That way you can actually have the exact, dimensions that you want. You put the images where you need to, enlarge this one, blah, blah, blah. And then you print it out and kind of use that as a part of the preliminary process, but also to post it online, to do pretty much anything. I always use Photoshop or some kind of image-based manipulation program like Pixlr. Pixlr works fine for what I do at the finish, just to kind of tweak the colors a little bit and contrast. Not too much, because if it's something I'm trying to advertise and sell, the original painting, then no. But if it's like an illustration especially, then yeah, I tweak the heck out of it.
Sorry, Sandra.
No worries. There is a question from Vitor Pinho, and he's asking, where in the Bay Area did you grow up? Are you still connected to the Portuguese communities around the Bay?
I am not as much, because I moved away in 2000, but my brother is. So our generation, my brothers, is we have a lot of cousins and close friends. He calls it the Portuguese mafia. So there's a lot of, they do fantasy football. They do a lot of gaming together. And I've been in touch a little bit here and there, but they still all hang out. So this is the generation that grew up American. So they mostly speak English. They're raising their kids. They're trying to keep their kids also going into something like the Portuguese band or the festas on Sundays and stuff like that. So they're, but it's like each generation, I think, in the country, it's like you have to make an effort. You have to make an effort to hang on to the culture. Yeah, there's still contact there. But Santa Clara is where I grew up. I was born and raised in Santa Clara. My brother went to Santa Clara University. I went to San Jose State, and a lot of our close friends, cousins, are still in Santa Clara, San Jose, maybe Mountain View, South Bay. So it's San Francisco, Oakland, and the South Bay is San Jose. That area.
So we are approaching the end of this session. So if you want to ask one last question to Lino, you are welcome to ask the question either on Facebook or on Zoom, on the chat, or on comments on Facebook. We have access to everything. So just if you want one last question. I don't know, Michael, if you have one more question for Lino.
I mean, I feel like we could talk about art all night, right? So, but no, I think I really respect the work, and I think it's great, and I thank you for taking the time to to talk to everyone and kind of share your work with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. This is fun. I think it's a great way. I mean, we are able to communicate in ways that, I keep talking about the past. We couldn't do this back then. So I feel like this is a great way to not only link the Portuguese culture community with art, which this is kind of new to me. Again, like what I've said about my past, it was there, but it not like this. So I appreciate what you guys are doing too, because this is a big deal. So I definitely want to get more involved, and let's put our hands together and pray for Sao Jorge not to get those big earthquakes, so that we can all hang out there this summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Thank you so much, Lino. Thank you so much, Lino, for showing your work and to share all your work and experience with us. And thank you, Michael, for co-hosting this session with me. And I want to thank you very much to everyone for joining us this evening. And I would like to let you know that the next Meet the Artist session is on May 10th, featuring Maria Estrela, and it will be co-hosted by the artist Elizabeth Casqueiro. I would also like to ask you to visit the Portuguese American Art Gallery at PortugueseAmericanArtGallery.com. And if you know any Portuguese American artists, please encourage them to send us an email at PortugueseAmericanArtGallery@gmail.com to submit their work and to be featured at our gallery. And I hope to see you soon, to see everyone soon.
I just posted the email.
Okay, someone had already posted your email, but it's good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Adieu.
Adeus.
Adieu.